Daf Memches Amud Beis will begin right at the bottom of Memches Amud Aleph, the very last word on the last line. We learned previously that there's a machshavas pigul, that if the kohen has a machshavas pigul by the ketairis, by the chafina, he has a machshava to do the burning the following day, it passes the ketairis. The shaila is over here is, if he had it not during the chafina, if he had it chisha bechasiyas gecholimau, if he had the machshavas pigul at the time of shoveling the coals, he shoveled the coals, he removed the coals from the mizbeach with this machshava. So do we say that machshir mitzvah kemitzvah dame or loy? Do we say, well, the shoveling of the coals in it itself is not an avodah? It's not an avodah per se, but it's a machshire mitzvah. It's necessary. It's something that is done in order to facilitate the mitzvah of burning the ketairis. So do we say that this machshire mitzvah is kemitzvah? Do we treat it like an avodah? And just like the avodah, if there's a machshavas pigul, it passes. Here also, do we say that it passes oy loy? Or do we say no, but seif kol seif, it's not an avodah, that it doesn't passel? Teku. And they have not resolved the shaila. Rashi has two approaches to the shaila. Do we say that machshir mitzvah kemitzvah dami, and therefore we should say that the ketairis is possible? Meaning, the way the Siach Yitzchak explains it, it's not only that the coals are possible, or perhaps even the ketairis should be possible. Do we treat it like an avodah? And just like if there's a machshavas pigul by the avodah, it would passel the ketairis. Here also passel the ketairis, and certainly would passel the coals themselves. Oidloi. That's one mahalach. The second mahalach he has as follows. Rashi says that the shaila is that is machshir mitzvah kemitzvah, and are the coals possible? And do we say that the coals are possible? Perhaps the coals themselves should not be possible. Now, even though we learned previously that the coals are possible belina, they do have a psul and lina, but that's only perhaps if the coals themselves were left over to the next day. But by a machshava to do the avodah the next day, since this over here is only machshir mitzvah, the machshava should not possible. Tekum. Boy, my name here of Sheshes. They ask for Sheshes the following shaila haylocha b'small mouth. If the kohen did the haylocha, bringing the dam to the mizbeach with his left hand, is it kosher or not? Now we know the avodas have to be done with the right hand. So the kabbalas adam, the zrikas adam, that has to be done b'yamin. The question is by haylocha. Kabbalah and zrika, it says kahuna. Wherever it says kahuna, it's b'yamin. But by halacha, even though halacha is an avodah, but we learn it out by inference, so it doesn't say it beferish. So the shaila is, therefore, does it require the right hand or not? Amar lu Rav Sheshes said to them, Tenisu. We learned in our Mishnah, not also to be mina v'sakapis mala. What's your shaila? It says that the kohen gadol, he takes the machta b'yamina, the coals with the shovel, with the coals in his right hand, there's a kaf, and the ladle with the ketairis in his left hand. So, and he's doing the oiloch, he's bringing the kodesh kadoshim. So obviously that oiloch b'small is kosher. So what's the shaila? Taisus explains, it says that, well, it's obvious we have the mission over here, so why did they ask the question? Why was the question asked? Because, Taisus explains, because, first of all, you could say that the fact that, yes, it's true that you brought the ketairis into the Kodesh Kadoshim with the left hand, but as we learned previously, he can only make one trip. And therefore, for practical purposes, he had to take the coals with his right hand because it was heavy, and it was fiery, it was burning. So for practical purposes, he had to therefore take the coals in his right hand and the ketairis in his left hand. But how can you apply that to a case where it's not necessary to do it that way, and therefore perhaps we should learn out from there? And secondly, we should say that we don't learn it out from the ketairis. Rather, we should say that the halacha of the dam, learn it out from the kabbalas adam. And kabbalas adam has to be done b'yamin, so halacha should be mean. Why should you say learn it out from the halacha of the ketairis, learn it out from the kabbalah of the dam? And on that, Rav Sheshes answers and says that no. If they would be a psul with this small, the Torah would therefore say you could use 2 trips. The Torah would not mandate 1 trip if a halacha b'small would be possible. Therefore, you can learn out from the fact that the Torah said that it can only be done in 1 trip. It only mandated 1 trip. Therefore, it shows you that halacha b'small is kosher. And the second point is, no, rather learn out halacha from halacha. Don't learn out halacha adam from kabbalas adam. Rather learn out halacha from halacha. Learn out halacha of the dam from halacha of the ketores. So therefore, resolve it from our Mishnah. Why not learn it from the following Mishnah that we learned before? That a regel, it says when they bring the vorum to the Mizbeach, it says a regel shemin b'smala, that they bring out the vorum to the Kevesh. So it says that the Kohen takes the roishes in the right hand, and the regel shel yamin, the regel yamin, is in the left. And with the place of the hide outwards, meaning the incision is covered, it's there covered, so the incision is covered. The skin is, the place of the hide is outwards, so it's covered to do it that way. But upon him, you see that he brings it to the Mizbeach with his left hand. So doesn't that show you that halach is kosher b'small? The Gemara answers no. If it was only from there, I would have thought to say I would have thought that that's to say that's the bringing of the barn to the mizbeach, to the kevish. That over there, that's something that's not makiv kapora. Meaning, once this rikas adam is done, the korban is a kosher korban. There's a kapara. The burning of the vorum on the mizbeach is a mitzvah, but it's not makif. So it would have said that yes, it's true that's small. You can do the halach of the small, but that's only maybe on something which is not makif kapara. But over here we're talking about a halacha which is ma'akiv kapara, which is essential avodah. Maybe not kamash ma'lan. That's why we prove it from this case over here of the ketores notal as hamachta. Meisvei Akashan Risheshus. How can you say that halacha b'small is kosher? How can you say that? It says beferish. This brisa says zar v'oinen shikar balmum. If it was a zar or an oinen, someone the kind he had one of his relatives, close relatives, died that day, or shikar is drunk or balmum. It's balmum bekabbalah. U'b'halacha, it says clearly, b'halacha was reckon all these avodas as possible. V'chein yoshev, and similarly be sitting. V'chein, small, possible, and also with the left hand it's possible. So you see, it says beferish that halacha, the small is possible to yufta. It's a tiyufta, it's a kasha. The Taisus Yomi Masechet Kasha, the maskoni is that halacha b'small is possible. Well, if halacha b'small is possible, how can the Kohen Gadol bring the ketores into the Kodesh Kadoshim with his left hand? He answers that over here, the Torah, since it's virtually impossible, and practically speaking, it cannot be done otherwise. Since the Torah says the priority has to be that it's coming in once, you can only bring it once, and mandate bringing in once, you can't bring it in twice, and therefore, for practical considerations, it cannot be done with the right hand. Over here, it's a yosem and a klal. Over here, then it can be done with the left hand. But you cannot apply it to other cases where there is a possibility to do it, or practical possibility to do it with the right hand. Over there, then it must be done with the right hand. Break the Gemara. It says Risheshus himself said that it's kosher b'small. Now here the brisa says that it's possible small. Well, v'harasheshus u'doisava. But Risheshus himself had a kasha he asked the kasha from this very same brisa. So how was he unaware of this brisa, and how did he say that halacha b'small is kosher? The Omar le Risheshus la Amir the Rav Chisda. Risheshus said to the Amir, the one who is speaking out, the shir of Rav Chisda, he said, Boy minim Rav Chisda, ask the following Shaila Rav Chisda, halacha b'zor mahu. Can you do halacha b'zor with a non-kohen? Omar le mekshera or mikra. So he answered, then he said, it's kosher, and I'll bring you a raya from a pasuk. It says, "Vayishchatu ha-pasach v'yizku akanami adam v'lavim avshitim." It says this is Lagabe the Korban Pesach that was brought at the time of Yomi Melech in his 18th year. He mustered Klal Yisrael together to bring the Korban Pesach, and there was a huge oilam that brought the Korban Pesach. They had a huge crowd over there, so therefore it said they had to divide up the avodas. V'yishchadu ha-pasach, the Leviim then did the shchita. V'yizku ha-kahana mi-adam, and v'alavim shitim. Then the Leviim brought the. This is the way he learns it, that the Leviim brought the dam. There was a Kabbalah done by the Kahanim. The Leviim took that blood and they brought it to the Kahanim that were standing next to the Mizbeach. And the Leviim Mashitim, and the Leviim did the skinning of the animal, and the Kahanim did the Zrikas of dam. So therefore, it seems to be from the pasuk that the Leviim did the Hailocha. Leviim are Lagabi the Vaira Azar. So you see Azar is Kashem. Rosh Hashanah himself asked the kasha from the previous brisa, which says Zar v'aynin shikor balmum v'kabala v'ayloch v'zrika posel v'chein yeshiv v'chein small posel, that it is a posel with a zar, that haylocha with a zar is posel. So therefore, he himself asked from the brisa. He was aware of the brisa. How could he have said that it is kosher? More answered, Basa the Shameh Haraisa. He originally said that it is kosher b'smal. They asked him a kasha from his brisa, and now he became aware of this brisa. And then when this shaila came up by Hailocha with a zar, he then asked on it from this brisa. He asked from this brisa after he became aware of it from after his original psak that it was kosher with the small. He became aware of this brisa, became aware of the mistake, and then he asked it on Rav Chisda. Bring the Gemara, but Seif kol Seif. How can we say that it's possible? Rav Chisda kra ka'amar, but Rav Chisda brought a raya from this pasuk. More answers. No, it's not a raya because Dovid Masechet Yoma. They did it like someone who is acting as a stand, meaning. Yes, it's true that the Leviim, the blood was passed from the Leviim to the Kahanim that were standing by the Mizbeach, but they didn't do a Hailocha. They didn't bring it. They didn't do the Hailocha. They didn't bring it. What they did was they were standing. There was an assembly row. There was like an assembly line of Leviim standing one next to each other, and they passed it from one to each other without doing the Hailocha. They just passed it from one to the other, not doing a hailocha. That's not called a hailocha because they didn't move, they didn't bring it until they brought it to the kohen that was standing nigh the mizbeach, and then that kohen brought it to the mizbeach.